Howdy, how's it going? Welcome to my channel, Jessica in Progress. My name is Jessica, and right now I'm about to tell you about all of the terrible books that I read in 2023, or like the top 11. And this ranges from like disappointing to absolutely terrible. I would not recommend. All right. So I've got 11 books here because originally I had made 10 and then I suddenly remembered another one that I just started seething with rage. And I was like, all right, this one was bad too. So I've got 11 here for you. Now we're going to start with our most disappointing. Okay. Disappointing was In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. This one just confused me. It was a Pinocchio retelling, kind of. A sci-fi fantasy kind of thing where humans, for the most part, are extinct, except for our main character, whatever his name is, Victor. He is like the only human, and his dad was a robot, and all of his friends are robots, and they go through this whole journey about finding love, I think. Like, am I supposed to root for a human and a robot falling in love? I don't really know. It's totally possible, I guess, but the way that this was written was just meh to me. I liked that the main character was Ace, but that's really the only thing that I liked about it. The more I think about it, the more I'm just like, what were we doing here? Like, what was the point of this? I don't know what we were supposed to be doing here. So, In the Lives of Puppets was very disappointing. The next very disappointing book would be How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. Now, I liked it when I read it, but the more I think about it, the more I'm just like, what were we doing here? Why was this here? Because this, you would think, is a haunted house book, and then how the parts are divided is like the stages of grief. So you would also think that it's a thing about grief, but we barely talk about grief. And it's not a haunted house book. It's a puppet that possesses a bunch of other puppets. And also, mom and dad died here, but we only ever talk about moms dying. So like justice for the dads too, I think. It was just weird, and I really didn't like the puppet. I guess it kind of also went over generational trauma, but it was just kind of a miss on everything that it tried to do. It's fine if you are like it's fine. It's fine. And that's really all I can say about it, which is really sad considering, the Southern Book Club's guide to slaying vampires was so amazing. So I don't know what we're doing with this one. My next book is a book that was supposed to be sweet and fun, but really I was just so annoyed with most of the time, and that's going to be My Roommate is a Vampire. It was fun in like a brain off, binge it all in one day kind of book, but like the longer you think about it, the more you're just like, none of this makes sense. And also, if you started thinking at all when reading it, like even just a little bit of like, that's weird, in the middle of reading it, the whole thing would just kind of fall apart. It was cute. I'll give it that. And if you just want like a brain off, like really, just don't think when you read this and you'll have a fun time. But the more I thought about it, the worse it got. So that's really it. It was disappointing. It was disappointing. I didn't like it. In the end, I didn't like it. This book is on here because it had a lot of potential. It could have been good. It's just one of those ones where there was not a lot of craft behind it. And that's Omen of Ice by Jus Accardo. It was just disappointing. I could have finished it if I wanted to, but I stopped about halfway through because I felt like I was wasting my time because everything was sort of predictable, and I also wasn't feeling the chemistry between the characters because it really was just a book of dialogue. Like, there was no real explaining on how things were going on. It was just these two characters talking to each other, and also our main character kind of super personality flipped from the prologue to chapter 2. There is potential here. There is honest potential here. The premise was great. I just didn't have fun reading it and felt like I was wasting my time as I tried to. And those books were really my disappointing ones. The next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books are all bad. They're all just bad, period. And we're gonna start with, these are kind of in order, kind of. This is House of Breathing Wings by Olivia Wildenstein. Now, I DNF'd this halfway through at about the 230, 250-ish page mark. And that's when everything was starting to change and would have become better if I stuck it out. Unfortunately, I had wasted so much of my time already in this girl's whining about everything that was going on, about how she was like, she's basically a half elf, okay? So she's not accepted by any society, but she grew up with the royalty for some reason. Anyway, she likes a bunch of bad guys. Like, they're abusive, they aren't good, they're supposed to be abusive and not good or whatever. I didn't like the writing. I didn't like the barely described world. I also really hated this weird, like, purity culture thing that was going on, where it was completely okay for all of the guys to have literally banged anyone, but our main girl was also like, oh, I gotta save myself for marriage, but also, like, everyone here lives to be like 2,000 to 3,000 years old and have many partners. It was weird how our main girl was supposed to be like functioning in our modern day world, but everyone else in the world didn't function by those rules. I just like the makeup, the way that this book was put together, I didn't like it. And also, like, there's just an entire, like, change, a whole change of the book halfway through. Like, we are whining in this town for forever. There's this prophecy or something, and she likes the serpents. There's these, like, serpent things. It's like Venice. The whole town is on rivers. I don't know. It was absolutely terrible because we go through all of that, and then halfway through the book, everything changes because now she's on her mega mission to find these crows or something. And I was done with it by the time it started getting good, so I gave up. Other people, I've read some reviews on it. Some people say that after you get through the first half, it becomes better, but I don't think that you should have to slog through an entire half of a book for it to get good. So it was bad. I did not like House of Beating Wings. It was not good. After that, we have Immortal, Longings by Chloe Gong. This is a dystopian sci-fi fantasy speculative book that is a battle to the death games happening between our main characters. Kala is the long ago princess of this modern-ish Hong Kong city. But Chloe Gong doesn't know how to describe poor people except for poor and trashy. And also, there is no chemistry between the two mains. And also, the death game didn't feel important at all and didn't make sense in the world. The world building was all over the place. Also, it was very, very slow. And also, the death game happened basically behind the scenes. I have like a whole hour review deep dive thing explaining most of the problems with this book. Go watch that if you want to know more, but I did not like it. Will I still read the second one? Yeah. The next book that I did not like when I read this year was unfortunately like one of my last books of the year. Talk about ending on a slow note. That's going to be The Kingdom of Sweets by Erika Johansen. This is another one where the premise sounded really good. We have these two twins, right? And one of them is light and one of them is dark, and they go into the Nutcracker world, okay? And there's also this thing where one of the twins is really jealous about the other twin, especially because her pretty twin stole the only guy that looked at her nice and was sleeping with her, you know, who was like a duke. And it could have been really interesting. And in fact, the first part was really interesting. The second part started to lose itself, but was still kind of holding on. And then parts 3, 4, and 5 were just so boring and such a slog and not even close to what part 1. Well, I mean, it followed up what part 1 set up, but I wish we had stuck more with like this twin rivalry thing more and better, and also stuck a little bit with like figuring out what was wrong with the Kingdom of Sweets better. It was a slog. It tried to speak on things that didn't mean anything in the book, and it just kind of like blew it out of word count proportions. If we had just stayed focused on the twins and their story, it would have been a lot better with like this be careful what you wish for thing, but it just dragged. Okay, next one. The next book books, I'll go with books, plural, were the start of my year. This was like the first and third book that I read, and that's gonna be, spoiler alert, And All the Feels by Olivia Dade. I picked this up only because it was the first book for my indie book club, and supposedly they're like companion romance novels, so technically you didn't have to read the first one in order to read the second one, but I did read the first one before the second one, which made me even more mad about the first one because of where it picked up. Like, it was annoying. Also, I was sold this one as a road trip book, and it wasn't a road trip book. Anyway, it's basically Game of Thrones fanfiction in real life, which isn't a bad thing, but it's about like the real people and not like the characters in Game of Thrones, the series, TV series. But it's switched around to be more Greek inspired instead of absolutely blatantly Game of Thrones, even though it is really blatantly Game of Thrones. It's also supposed to be, both of the books, they're supposed to be love letters to fan fiction because the main dudes in both of them, as well as the main chick in the first one, are fan fiction writers for the TV series that the main dudes are starring in. Unfortunately, it felt more like it was shitting on fan fiction the entire time. And it really was basically, these fan fictions are only the sexy kind of fan fictions where you put your pairings together and make them have sex, which I feel is not the only thing in fan fiction. Granted, like being a fan fiction writer myself, you do for the most part have to put some sort of sex in your pairing for you to get actual views in fan fiction, at least when I was writing. But it was not necessary, and there were a lot of really good plot lines that were coming in. I didn't like them. I also felt, because these are supposed to be like body positive romances as well, I also felt like they were more fat fetishizing, especially, spoiler alert, I felt was more fat fetishizing than it was fat positive. And also I just didn't like them. I don't think they're good representation on either fanfiction or body positive works. And I also don't like that it actively was like, I don't care about my health, because it just, it tasted bad reading it. I didn't like them. They weren't good. They weren't fun. There's a third one about another couple that's barely mentioned between these two books. I'm not touching it. No, I didn't like them. Next one. The next one I almost forgot because I only read it digitally, and that is Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I hated this. I did not like it. I think if I had read it in high school / middle school when it came out, I would have loved it, but I read it now and I did not like it. Here's the thing. Throughout college and early high school, I was really into Greek mythology, okay? So I knew a lot about Achilles and Patroclus coming in. So having their relationship the way it was in here just didn't fit with how I liked it. I felt like it really made Patroclus super unimportant in the whole story and role of everything. It also, I don't like how it made Achilles not have to work for anything. It just was like Achilles was born ready to murder kings. You know, I did not like it. I felt like the pacing of it was terrible. I didn't like the pacing at all. And also, I feel like, especially because it was written by a Greek mythology professor, that the care for the Roman culture itself, how it was back then, was completely erased. Uh, It was completely erased, much like the original relationship, how it was interpreted between Achilles and Patroclus. And while I am glad that this author brought the attention back to the probably gay relationship between Achilles and Patroclus, I did not like how it had to be all or nothing between the two of them, because in my mind, both of them are bisexual icons. And in this one, they're not. And I felt like it fumbled the bag. These next two books, I actively recommend that you don't pick them up. I don't think that you should read them or look at them or give them the time of day. Second to last, the penultimate, is Silver in the Bone by Alexandra Bracken. Now, I think Alexandra Bracken is a great person. Don't get me wrong. I think this book is terrible. Absolutely, like, not good. The pacing is bad. The characters are terrible. Our main character doesn't do anything. All of the other people do things for her and not with her. Also, we're setting up a cast of characters that's supposed to become a team, and none of them interact with each other aside from with the main character. Or Tamsin, okay? I hated her so much. So Tamsin is supposed to get together this, like, it's like an Arthurian legend retelling, okay? It's this weird world. She is basically a magic-less person living in a magic-full world, and I thought we could have done something really interesting with that. Unfortunately, we immediately gave our person seeing, like, it would have been a great way to be like, hey, look at this. We have this cursed girl who also can't see magic. And then, like, the first 20% of the book, we're like, never mind, she can do magic. We fixed that, so it's no longer interesting. She also has daddy issues, but she can't figure out if she likes her dad or hates her dad, foster dad, whatever. We also have brother issues. We also have this dying world of Avalon. I feel also, like, it didn't need to be Arthurian at all. We could have changed the name of Avalon, and we could have changed the name of King Arthur, and it would have been fine. Like, it would have been the exact same mess of a story. And then the way they reacted to the ending of this book was, your entire world just changed, and you're just like, let's get a cup of tea. Like, there is one thing that I like about this book, and it is a spoiler, so if you plan to read it, go ahead and skip forward 5 seconds. I like that she killed almost everyone in the book. And that's all I'm gonna say. The last book that... don't fall. The very last and the very worst book on this list of worst books of 2024 was one that I was highly anticipating, which only makes it even worse, and that is A Haunting on the Hill by Olivia. A Haunting on the Hill by Elizabeth Hand. This book was terrible. Okay, so this is a return, an authorized return to The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. One thing that it did really well is that I liked how it aged the house. I like how it was like, obviously someone was here in the 80s and they brought in these 80s things. Obviously someone was here in the 90s and they put up this 90s wallpaper really bad. I liked how it aged the property, but that's the only praise that I can give it. Now, I know that it's unfair to compare it to the original, and I wasn't expecting it to be anything as good as Shirley Jackson's work, but I think that it took Shirley Jackson's work and took a fucking shit on it. Like, it was not good. The characters in here were insufferable. I didn't like any of them. None of them had redeeming qualities. And the play that they were making was also really bad. Like, I don't understand what we were doing here. And also, we took this, like, great piece of work by Shirley Jackson that was just, like, a feminist piece, maybe gay, also, like, all of these other things about growing up that may or may not have been a haunted house to begin with. Like, yeah, you were locked in a place with people for a long time and your thoughts got ahead of you. Was it a haunted house or was it mentally unstable? And this book was like, it's a haunted house, it's paranormal, it's supernatural, done, period, end of day. And that was a choice. And it wasn't a good one. We are stuck with these insufferable murder ballads by by the girlfriend of the person writing the play. And they she sets up all of these things for all of the characters to hate each other. And you're just like, which one's gonna die? Which one's gonna do it? Is it gonna be a murder? Which one's gonna die? And like, and you're expecting it to be like, to deal with all of the things that are going on with their life. Like, it's supposed to be a psychological horror, right? No, it's a supernatural horror. All of that psychological bullshit that we set up in the beginning that we hated and didn't care about and made every single character in the book unredeemable and unlikable. Yeah, that didn't matter. Like, what happened in here, if they had all gone in being best of friends, the same thing would have happened. Like, I don't understand why we had to make them all hateable if we were gonna make it a supernatural story. It was not good. It was not fun. I did not like it. I don't think that it was a good... Of all of the stories that could have been authorized to return to Hill House, this was the one. And that makes me mad. Anyway, that was all of the terrible books that I read. Well, not all of them, but that was the top 11 terrible books that I read in 2023. Let me know what you thought of these books if you read them, if you also found them terrible and disappointing. Does anyone have anything good to say about this book, by the way? And let me know the worst book that you read, because I am interested. Anyway, that's been everything. My name's Jessica. Y'all have a great time reading good books, hopefully in 2024. And remember, we're all in progress. Thanks. Bye.